I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey, folks, welcome to the show. We really appreciate you being with us. This is Monday and hour number 1 as we start out our week. Thank you for starting the beginning of your week with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we'll be talking with Taisha Powell. She's a nationally recognized legal analyst and author of Trump Must Win. Discover the dark days Americans will face if Trump isn't reelected in 2020. It's always great to meet somebody new, especially if they have a book out. So look forward to talking with Taisha Powell. Also, has anybody ever noticed the, I don't know, there's a lot of people in local areas across the state of Arkansas that are realizing that we have a bail system that kind of sets people up to fail, or this perpetual fining of folks and they can't keep up with the court costs and everything else. And there are programs. I know there's one here where I am locally in Northeast Arkansas, and I know there's also one. I saw this headline last week: bail program aids inmates, but jails crowding persists. This was from the Arkansas Democrat. What day was this? Back on the 23rd of September, so a couple of weeks ago. Anyway, I thought we would check in with Conduit legal analyst Joey Williams. That's going to come up at 7:33. He actually has researched this topic extensively, has a lot of information on this. So we will talk to him and get some new insight on that. Between those two interviews, we've got a show chock full of things to talk about. One of the things I want to kind of get into this maybe a little bit more coming up at 7:05. But this week, on Friday, the Arkansas House of Representatives will consider the expulsion of State Representative Mickey Gates. 59 lawmakers say they support expulsion this week. So that means fewer than 10 undecided votes stand between State Representative Mickey Gates staying in office or becoming the first member of the Arkansas House of Representatives to be expelled from the body in more than 100 years. It's pretty complex. I mean, from what I can tell, according to this report, okay, it does say that they're going to give Mickey Gates a chance to defend himself. Now, his attorney won't be able to address the House, but Mickey Gates will be able to address the House. How long will that go is undecided. I have a feeling, this is just my feeling, and I hope it's not the case, but I have a feeling that State Representative Mickey Gates, when he presents his case, his reasoning, I don't know what he's going to say, but if it goes on too long and people get bored or people don't think that what he's saying is relevant to the case, then you could have a motion for immediate consideration, I'm assuming. I mean, I don't know. I mean, how often do you convene for an expulsion hearing? I mean, this is something that a lot of people don't even know, but they could always motion for immediate consideration and just shut his defense down. So it's like, if you're Mickey Gates, do you go into the minutia? Do you hit the high points? You have no idea actually how long you're going to have. So we'll talk about this a little later. There is an article in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette that you can check out on the front page. Gates' House fate hinges on vote. Also, Roby Brock interviewed, let's see, who's this guy? What is it? William Hanson. Did you see this on Talk Business and Politics? William Hanson. He's a Democrat, and he's running for the 4th Congressional District. He's challenging Bruce Westerman. I think there's another Democrat running too. But boy, I caught his, I caught what he said about Donald Trump and impeachment, and boy, you talk about drinking the Kool-Aid of the leftist, progressive, agenda-driven media. There's a few of his statements that I think are very interesting. We're going to get into those in just a moment. Now, speaking of Donald Trump, let's look at this. Stephen Miller, the spokesperson or senior advisor to President Trump, he was on a podcast with Breitbart News, and I want you to listen to what he said about what I think this is very accurately stated about what the deep state is, who is working for the deep state, and he made some interesting analogies here. Quote, the deep state is a collection of permanent bureaucrats enmeshed inside the federal government who can't be fired or removed, at least historically, have not been able to be, because of misguided civil service laws. They believe they know better than you and your listeners and the voters how the country ought to be run. At this moment in time, the deep state has a knife aimed at the heart of American democracy, and that's what you're seeing playing across your TV screens and newspaper pages and online. With these so-called whistleblowers, now there's a second one, by the way, who are, of course, in fact, angry, hate-filled, rage-driven bureaucrats determined to take down the President of the United States and illicitly and improperly using the Whistleblower Protection Act in order to effectuate their designs. Boy, if that isn't succinct, I don't know what is. That's exactly what's happening. And I think this whistleblower number 2 that you're now starting to hear about is just essentially waiting in the wings. They probably got a whole line of these people lined up. Matter of fact, the lawyer, I believe, works for this group that's been soliciting, putting ads all over D.C., trying to entice people, bureaucrats, lifers, deep staters, to come out. If you see something, say something. And, whistleblower number 2 is necessary in this week's news cycle because whistleblower number 1 has been discredited because he went to Adam Schiff and his people first. Not only that, we now know the CIA changed their whistleblower laws a month before the news broke. When they knew that they had this whistleblower ready to do this, they changed the whistleblower criteria, rather, not laws, saying that you could be a whistleblower and it could be second or third-hand information. It doesn't have to be first-hand information. They did that specifically for this guy, okay? This was all orchestrated. This was all, basically, they put all this in a glass case and emergency break open glass. And they did this because they know the president is asking these foreign leaders now to start, helping with this investigation into CrowdStrike and what really happened in 2016, right? We have a Mueller report that essentially refused to challenge the idea that Joseph Mifsud was a Russian agent. They just assumed, he was a Russian asset when he's clearly a Western intelligence asset. He's clearly was working with, and he was the guy that essentially, was used to get this ball running. The insurance policy, if you will, that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page talked about, right? In case he wins, we got to have something. Well, that's what this whole thing was. I mean, it really was cloak and dagger, espionage. It's something out of a movie, but I mean, that's kind of that stuff really happens. You know what I mean? Except, you don't get caught. They've been caught. Okay, Miller continued, quote, one of the gravest threats that we face today against Stephen Miller, senior advisor to Donald Trump, and I can't emphasize this enough, to our Republican form of government is the unelected deep state, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Listen to this. The Constitution of the United States, Article 2, states very clearly the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. What that means is that the whole executive power is invested in one democratically elected person, the president. The president, who is accountable to the voters, the president who is accountable to the American people, holds and wields the executive power. Every other person in the federal government, in the executive branch, is an extension of his authority, is acting as an extension of his authority, delegated to them. They have no independent authority. So when a deep state bureaucrat says, I don't want Donald Trump to be president, I don't want to effectuate his policies, I don't want to carry out his agenda, so I will do the opposite. They're violating the Constitution, and they're taking away the power of the American people to elect who heads the executive branch and what policies they implement. Then he went on to talk about a hypothetical. Imagine, as an example, if a U.S. senator or congressman was elected but was saddled with the staff from the previous senator or congressman that worked against them night and day to block them from carrying out the legislative agenda they campaigned on. Would anybody ever tolerate that? This is the same thing happening in the executive branch now, but played across thousands of people seated throughout the federal government, and I've seen this firsthand. If you ever wanted a confirmation that establishment presidents from both parties have essentially been the exact same, this is your confirmation. Because whatever you think about Donald Trump, he is not anything like the establishment in Washington, D.C. Whatever you think about him, he has gone in and he is actually attempting to change the way things are done. And that is the real reason why you see this allergic reaction, this immune system kick in. And the CIA is trying to do what the FBI failed to do right now, leaking his phone calls. When's the president of the United States gets his phone calls leaked with foreign leaders? It's happened 3 times now. And I think a fourth because I think Australia's now been leaked twice. It's because people are upset about something. Now, is it possible somebody, whistleblowers acting in good faith? Yeah, but I want to know your name. I want to know who you are. And I think, and this is what Senator Lindsey Graham said, if you're going to take down a president of the United States, the American people need to know everything about the whistleblower. Literally everything. Now, the real reason this is going on, though, in my opinion, is because the president is asking questions about the Democrat corruption in Ukraine. Headline. Go to this Daily Wire piece, shall we? Audio, email evidence shows that the DNC colluded with Ukraine to boost Hillary by alarm. I had no idea this was the case, but over at theblaze.com, that's Glenn Beck's outfit. Oh, okay. Well, it definitely is on that list there that you see. I didn't realize this, but you realize there has been somebody convicted in the Ukraine for election tampering, and it was front page news in the Ukraine, but nothing over here because it had to do with the Ukraine influence in our election, because they were colluding with the Democrats to do it. And yet this the whole time our media was saying Russia, Russia, Russia. Man, I'm telling you, the fact that there are these stories that just get completely ignored and buried by the mainstream media, I mean, it's almost criminal. The Blaze has released an audio recording that they recently obtained that appears to show Artem Sitnik, director of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, admitting that he tried to boost the presidential campaign of Hillary Clinton by sabotaging then President Donald Trump. The connection between the DNC and the Ukrainian government was veteran Democratic operative Alexander Chalupa, who had worked in the White House Office of Public Liaison during the Clinton administration and then went to work on as a staffer for the DNC. Chalupa was working directly with the Ukrainian embassy in the United States to raise concerns about Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, and according to Politico, she indicated that the embassy was working directly with reporters researching Trump, Manafort, and Russia to point them in the right directions. The Ukrainian embassy political officer who worked at the embassy at the time a guy named Andriy Telezinko stated that the Ukrainians were coordinating an investigation with the Hillary team on Paul Manafort and Alexander Chalupa, and that the embassy worked very closely with Chalupa. I mean, it's nuts. This guy was convicted, by the way, in Ukraine of doing this. Nothing here in the at the time when we were looking into, the media was looking into foreign interference in our elections. This guy was convicted of that in the Ukraine. Nothing. Nothing. Not a peep over here. We're just now finding out about it, and the guy's on tape admitting it. I mean, the tape that the Blaze has is what was used in court in Ukraine to convict this guy. So here he is. He's admitting to tampering with our elections, admitted working with Hillary Clinton. He is actually convicted in the highest court in Ukraine. This is all front page news in the Ukraine, while we are saying, was there anyone tampering with our election? Let's see here. Again, this is Daily Wire kind of composing all this. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And who knows how much further this goes. I mean, I know there's a lot of dots to connect here. But apparently that $1 billion, that Joe Biden gave to the Ukraine disappeared. And this is the thing. I mean, this is why the president... Now, in order to accept this, you have to give the president the benefit of the doubt, which nobody's willing to do. But, I mean, if we give them $1 billion, Joe Biden extorted it, hey, don't investigate my son, fire the prosecutor, here's your $1 billion. But then that $1 billion just kind of, they lost track of it. It's like the Pentagon losing a ton of money. Remember when didn't the Pentagon lose like billions and billions and billions of dollars about 19 years ago? Anyway, so the president saying, I don't want to give you guys money if it's just going to continue to go to the same people and get stolen and contribute to corruption. And that's the bottom line here is, whether you don't like Trump or not, whether you like Trump or not, it doesn't matter. I mean, the fact is, the Democrats were playing very nice with a lot of these corrupt Ukrainian politicians. Anyway, and that's why they're freaking out right now. And they're going to have whistleblower 2, and they're going to have whistleblower 3 and 4 and 5. Meanwhile, in swing districts, there are reports in these suburb districts that went Democrat last time in Congress that they are not on board with this at all. Anyway, we'll continue to cover this. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back here in just a moment. Our meme of the day is already selected. It's about climate change. We'll bring that to you at 7:50 this morning, so you want to stay tuned for that. Or if you ever miss our meme of the day, feel free to go to Twitter, and you want to follow Conduit News on Twitter, @Conduit News. Also, YouTube, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, as well as click the little bell to receive notifications when we go live like we are right now. We're going to take a break. Back in just a moment. Here now with us is the infamous State Representative Josh Miller. He's from District 66. Josh, how are you this morning?
Well, Paul, I'm doing good. I appreciate that introduction there. That's actually nicer than I get other places. So
yeah, well,
I'll take it.
I trust me, I know. So you are the chair of is it a subcommittee or the committee on Arkansas Game and Fish?
It's a subcommittee, part of Legislative Council, the Oversight Committee of Game and Fish and State Police.
Okay. So, the Arkansas Game and Fish, the very powerful agency in and of themselves. I wanted to have you on. Well, first of all, your father killed one of the biggest buck I think I've ever seen. Did you guys actually count the points on that thing? I've never seen anything like it.
I haven't gotten them all counted yet.
Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News The Parrot. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator.
我在这里 On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Welcome. On Friday, news broke that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi may soon be facing similar allegations to Joe Biden. This from One American News. A recent report suggested Pelosi's son, Paul Pelosi, may have used her position to benefit him financially. A promotional video from 2013 resurfaced on Thursday, brought to public attention from journalist Patrick Howley. The video shows Nancy Pelosi speaking about her efforts in office to push for clean energy. Her message is followed by a promotional statement from her son Paul, who is a board member of Viscoil and an executive at its related company NRG Lab. Pelosi's son traveled to the Ukraine in 2017 on behalf of the Corporate Governance Initiative, where he now serves as executive director. The official reason given for his visit was to discuss a youth soccer partnership program with the Ukrainian government, but clips of that trip have reportedly been removed from online. Interesting. Maybe this is why Pelosi's now pushing for impeachment? You think? Just a little bit? Yeah. All this stuff is going to start coming out. It's going to be ignored by the mainstream media as well. We're up against the hard break here in a minute, but also over the weekend, and I guess this broke on Friday, but there's this group, this pro-Trump group named LaRouche, and they basically sent an actress into an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez event where the actress very convincingly said that we need to eat babies to stop climate change. Yeah, and the she did a really good job. She was very convincing, but I mean, there's this pro-Trump group that took credit for it. It was a stunt, right? It was a stunt, probably more like a PR stunt for them. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's response was not to be like, eating babies, are you crazy? That's stupid. That's evil. No, instead, she just kindly shifted the subject elsewhere. Anyway, the response from AOC, if you haven't heard it, you know what? Because our meme of the day later today focuses on climate change, maybe that's when we should tackle this. We'll We'll be back here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now. That is
we didn't count, but it was an incredible deer, just a buck of 5 lifetimes. I think Dad is being rewarded for 70-something years of good living on this earth. Clean living.
Well, let me tell you, those are some incredible photos. You can see them, folks. They're up on Facebook. Okay, so Josh, I guess they've expanded some of these quarantine areas for chronic wasting disease. Deer season is upon us, or about to be,
right.
and so what are your thoughts on chronic wasting disease? On the efforts the Game and Fish here. They we now have Baxter County, Stone County included. It appears to be spreading. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think this is my personal opinion. I'm not a biologist, or whatever, but I have done quite a bit of research on this because I am an avid hunter and have land, and actually, we have a place in Stone County that's in the CWD zone, so I'm keenly interested. I think that we're going to discover, as it's kind of, you're kind of seeing this all over the country already. The more you look for something, the more you're going to find. I believe that we're looking more for CWD now. I think we're obviously going to find it more. I don't know that. First of all, I don't think that our public folks out here need to freak out about CWD. I don't think that they need to not eat deer that they shoot, or or quit hunting, or just say, well, we're going to lose all of our deer herd to CWD. I've asked the question, how many deer that we know have CWD that tested positive for chronic wasting disease? How many of those deer have died?
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here we go. Welcome back to the show. Telephone number if you want to contribute today to the program in any way. You can call or text 870-275-9799. Also, broadcasting on YouTube and Facebook. We want you to go to the Facebook page and give us a like, facebook.com/Conduit News, and participate in the ongoing chat and discussion right now. Folks, she's a nationally recognized legal analyst. She's the author of Trump Must Win, Discover the Dark Days Americans Will Face If Trump Isn't Reelected in 2020. Her name is Tisha Powell. Tisha, how are you this morning?
I am good, and I just want to tell your fans as well that I have like 30,000 combined followers on my social media, so I'm beginning to find out that I'm a social media influencer, because every day I do tweet to people about what's going on with this election. I think people understand that we're in an election cycle now, and the Democrats, which are not doing very well, they're trying to come up with an impeachment, inquiry for our president, and this seems to be really wrong. Yeah. Because it's not fair.
No, I mean, absolutely not. And we were just talking a little bit about that. Let me ask you this. What's your background, Tisha, and why did you want to write this book, Trump Must Win? What was your motivation?
Okay, aside from being an attorney, I live in Florida. I was in law school during the Florida account with Al Gore. I didn't get to finish constitutional law because my professor left to go defend Al Gore. And I thought to myself, this is wrong. This is really wrong. Then I volunteered for the Republican Party from 2008 to present. I have volunteered and worked on John McCain's campaign. I've worked on Mitt Romney's failed campaign for president with Barack Obama. I worked on E. Clay Shea campaign. So I call myself like the insider because I have worked and I'm still a volunteer with the Republican Party down in Florida since 2008. And I just know that Trump he's not really a politician. He's a businessman. The people around him, they're politicians. And they're going to play every game and angle at this. As you could tell, Romney and Rick Perry, they're behind this Ukraine scandal where they're trying to Romney's upset what's going on. But the real purpose, I feel, that Romney's upset is because he probably sees this as an opportunity to run. And it's not impossible for the GOP to divide the party just for more power.
Now
these things are very wrong.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So you've worked on multiple Republican campaigns, and you think that the president is somehow different. I mean, let me ask you this. I mean, if you've worked on these campaigns of these establishment Republicans, and yet you seem to be critical of these establishment Republicans now, did you ever think President Trump would be as successful as he's been, considering all the opposition he's faced?
Yes, he would be, because you know who Trump is really talking with? He's talking with the middle class. That's what this is about. This is a fight for the middle class. And this is why the Democratic Party would love to keep pushing Joe Biden, because both Biden and Trump, they get along with the middle class. People see themselves, having a beer with Joe Biden or sitting down and having a conversation with President Trump. And this is why this impeachment inquiry is so relevant, because the Democrats understand that, Joe Biden is the most electable one out of all the other people running.
Yeah, and I don't even know if he's that electable beyond that. But yeah, I see your point.
Well, yes, it's all about electability. It's all about the voters are gonna like. Unfortunately, though, Hunter Biden is not, he's a little kind of shady, I suppose, where he, go overseas, he makes a lot of money, and his dad has to cover for him. And, it's just not fair, because most people have children, and we do understand when your kids do bad stuff, you do need to punish them. You don't cover for them.
So let me ask you this. Again, we're talking with Tisha Powell. She is the author of this book, Trump Must Win. It was out September, so it was out last month, kind of the middle of the month. You say that if he doesn't win, things will be dark. So I want you to kind of, in your book, what do you mean by that?
We're looking at, Trump created a lot of jobs in America. We're looking at a Democratic Party that's now thinking about being a socialist. This is what it boils down to. I have 30 or 50 relatives in England. They would love to leave to come to America. Socialism is very tough. The taxes are very high, and it's going to be for everybody. It will not only be for the rich. In order for socialism to work, we all have to pay a lot of taxes, everyone. So those people who are bringing home $500 a week, they're going to probably give 40% of that money in order for us to get the government to care for us. So that's Warren's agenda, and Sanders and Biden. They cannot create jobs in America, so they decide they want to turn America into a socialist agenda. And this is wrong. This is wrong. America is built on capitalism. How are you going to reverse capitalism? It's like telling a chair to become a human. It won't work. And this is what Americans need to do. No, they need to educate themselves on this. Socialism doesn't work. America is a capitalist nation. That's the only way America is going to work. Bringing socialism to America is going to be a failed policy.
Wow.
And this is why I'm speaking out against the Democrats.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you for that, and I appreciate you writing this book, and I just want to encourage you, Tisha Powell, keep up the good work, and it's great to talk to you. It's especially, about what's going on with this impeachment situation, and I understand, as you do more interviews, you just get more and more content to talk about that's even beyond the book, because what's going on right now with the Democrats is, it's something to behold to see them, have this allergic reaction to the president and his policies and what he's doing. Tisha Powell, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you.
All righty.
Thanks so much.
Yep. Trump Must Win is the name of the book, folks. Her name is Tisha Powell, and we appreciate meeting her and appreciate her coming on the program, spending some time with us this morning. Okay, we're going to reset. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to tell you about State Representative Mickey Gates. His expulsion hearing will take place this week. We'll have that and much, much more when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
Died from chronic wasting disease? And the answer is 0. They've either been shot or hit with a car or, roadkill or something else. But there's been not one deer that we can say, well, this deer expired from chronic wasting disease. So, it's not good. We want to cooperate with Game and Fish, and I think they're trying their best. But I'm not buying the whole, CWD as the apocalyptic ending to our deer herd.
Well, I mean, so I'm not a biologist either, but from what I can tell, you've got biologists maybe in the private sector who think differently than the biologists who are working for the government. Is that true? Can you expand on that any?
I think so. I think there's definitely been a rift between government employed biologists, whether that be U.S. Fish and Wildlife or for various state conservation agencies or whatever. And it's not, and I don't mean to imply that here in Arkansas, just all over the country. This is what has kind of turned up, and you've got a lot of your private sector biologists that are saying, hey, this is the prion that causes chronic wasting disease is in the soil. It's been around forever, and we don't know how to get rid of things that are in the soil. And so, this is not anything to be worried about, and we should just go right on and keep hunting just like we always have, and keep, managing our deer herds the same way, and just basically ignore it. And then the biologists that work for the government obviously feel differently. They have a best practices protocol that's being implemented. What's being implemented here in Arkansas is being implemented in every other state where they've found CWD. And I imagine by the end, after this coming deer season, we're going to probably add several more states to the states that have found CWD, and
because now they're testing for it everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe a few more years ago than that, over in Mississippi, nobody ever thought about CWD. Nobody ever thought about anything, and they weren't testing for it, weren't looking for it, and
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Let's go to our this morning. Let's go to our Facebook feed, shall we? We have Woods on our Facebook feed. Facebook.com/Conduit News writes, Trump cannot be controlled, bought, or owned is why they hate him. Okay. Dennis writing, it's not just the Democrats that are in trouble in Ukraine. There are reasons why so many Republicans are opposing Trump and slow-walking his agenda. Romney isn't the only one, by the way. Also, Woods writing, they lost trillions. That is in response to me saying, didn't the Department of Defense lose a bunch of money? And I thought it was billions, but you research it. It is trillions. Let's see here. Then we have now I like this. This is a good one from Mark. Donald Trump brought his kids on board for just this reason. They will not be having the problems that Biden's and Pelosi's kids are having because they try to hide their activities. That is an interesting point, Mark, because when the president was elected, his kids got out of these foreign investments. When Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden gets elected, their kids go in to these foreign companies and investments. That is certainly a contrast. And, of course, we all know if this was Donald Trump Jr. instead of Hunter Biden, it would be, everybody would be freaking out about it. Understandably so, too, by the way. This is our last day. I mean, I don't know what the board's going to say tomorrow, but this is our last day where we do have our graphic up here, Impeach China. For those of you who haven't seen it, I think it's a pretty good one. You know, we got that little picture of the Capitol Dome in the background. We have the state of Arkansas with the Arkansas flag on it. And instead of the 3 stars at the bottom of the flag, we've replaced those 3 stars with 5 stars from the flag of China. And, of course, it says impeach China. I mean, if you're going to talk impeachment, I mean, we kind of wrap up last week and get into this week. If we're going to talk impeachment, we should talk impeaching China. Because, after all, it is the state of Arkansas that has these extremely conspicuous economic development ideas and deals with the Communist Party of China, where Asa Hutchinson and the Arkansas Economic Development Commission continue to ignore all the evidence and all of the red flags and still continue to go full throttle and do business with the Communist Chinese. Just like Hunter Biden, by the way. Speaking of, you know, when it comes to money, boy, right? You know what? Money is not red like Republicans. Money is not blue like Democrats. Money is green. And green is a color that's acceptable to both Democrats and Republicans. That analogy doesn't work if you acknowledge that the Green Party exists, but who cares about the Green Party? 870-275-9799 is the telephone number. Okay, so this week we've got the Arkansas House of Representatives will be considering the expulsion. If Mickey Gates is expelled, State Representative Gates is from the Hot Springs area, Garland County down there. If he's expelled, it'll be the first Arkansas House member to be expelled in 100 years. The last guy to be expelled from the House, if you don't know, was a guy that killed somebody. Killed another member of the General Assembly. And so they expelled him, and then he moved to another part of the state, ran for re-election, and went back and served. Yeah, they actually got into a fight on the House floor, and I'm assuming this was back, you know, wherever they met, the old State House. Or did they have, I don't even know, did they meet somewhere besides the old State House before? I mean, obviously they had to build the old State House at some point. Anyway, these two guys get in a fight, and the guy kills the other guy. I can't remember if it was by gunshot or by just, you know, by beating. I remember, you know, in D.C. they've got the caning of, what, is it Sumner? Is that his name? Anyway, crazy story, right? Crazy story that back in the 1800s, you know, you had one state representative kill another one. He gets acquitted, right? A jury of his peers finds him not guilty or finds that it was justified. I don't know. Boy, wouldn't you love to be a fly on that? I mean, talk about jury nullification. You know what I mean? That's crazy to me. Guy gets acquitted. There was probably multiple witnesses. And back in the day, they had a no-snitch policy, I guess. You know, protect their own. I mean, who knows? But then he moves to a different part of the state and runs and goes back to serve. You know nobody messed with that guy after that, right? Like, if you don't vote the way if you don't vote the way he wants you to, he'll just kill you. You got the wives of other state representatives, like, talking to their husbands, like, just do whatever that guy wants, honey. Be very careful when you're in Little Rock. Here it is. Okay, so there are, according to the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, fewer than 10 undecided votes stand between State Representative Mickey Gates staying in office or becoming the first member of the Arkansas House to be expelled in 100 years. So this all centers around the fact that the Department of Finance and Administration says that Mickey Gates didn't pay his taxes, and they had a plea. It was a plea of no contest. But you do have to understand that under the conditions of the plea, he pled under the conditions of a certain law. I think it's 346. And under this 346 law, the court will accept this no contest plea and then not accept it after he pays, in this case, $75,000 and experiences some period of probation. And then it's like nothing ever even happened, which is very odd legally. It's also very odd that the Department of Finance and Administration originally said he didn't file his tax returns. They originally said he owed $250,000. Now, I'm assuming they still maintain that, and yet they backed off for some reason, didn't go to trial, and instead they negotiated this, where he does pay something, but it doesn't actually go in his record. Now, State Representative Mickey Gates maintains that the reason Department of Finance Administration did all of this, they arrested the guy, somebody tipped off the media, he was, so they could get the perp walk, that they knew what was going on. Mickey Gates maintains that this happened because he ran a piece of legislation that was going to limit DFNA's ability to go back retroactively, meaning it was going to shorten the time of how far they could go back and make you pay back taxes. DFNA did not like this, okay? And that's what he maintains is why this whole thing happened in the first place, all right? Now, from a political perspective, as we've discussed, I don't think anybody cares. I mean, I care. I want to know the truth. I'm sure many of you want to know the truth. But from just a strictly like X's and O's bird's eye view of this situation, Republicans who are in control in this state, whether they're Republicans in name only, some of them or not, whether we are voting for Republicans and getting blue Democrat results, we'll put all that aside. None of that matters. The situation is they don't like this. Like, it's like, it just hits a nerve, It's like, okay, we got a guy, he didn't pay his taxes. That's the narrative. He did not pay his taxes. Didn't pay him. That's what people are saying, right? And so, case closed, you shouldn't be in the legislature. Now, if that is in fact the story, then you can understand why they vote for expulsion, if in fact that's the story. But there are reports, and you can go back and look at them. When this thing first came out, Mickey Gates' defense, when he was arrested, and by the way, he was reelected after the arrest. They waited to arraign this guy until a week before early voting started. You talk about the political motivations here. They wanted to make sure, because they look stupid. He got charged, and then he got reelected. And the only way you get reelected in your local district after you get arrested for not paying your taxes is if you go and tell your story to civic groups and organizations and you let them know, hey, this isn't the real story here. That's the only way possible that happens, by the way. Okay? Originally, when Gates was arrested, he said that he was told not to file his income taxes because he was under audit. And he was told, this is what he said publicly on record, that he was told that the Department of Finance and Administration told him, don't file your tax returns because you're under audit. We have to do that for you. Now, that got very little press. I think the Arkansas Times made fun of it because, you know, people just automatically assume if you get arrested for not paying your taxes that, I mean, obviously, whatever bureaucracy that is going to be correct in their assessment and in their deliberations of, you know, charging you with not paying your taxes. That's an assumption, right? When we have confidence in our government, or, you know, I mean, the confidence is there. I mean, sometimes I think it's that we've got too much faith in these people. But anyway, so we got less than 10 people. What actually was going to happen if they have this vote and they vote not to expel him? That's interesting. I mean, if you've got 59 House members have said, 59 House members have told the Arkansas Democrat Gazette that publicly or anonymously they plan to vote to expel Mickey Gates. It takes 67 votes to remove him. Okay. 59. So we got less than 10. We got 8 votes here. All right. An initial poll published the 22nd showed 54 members planned to vote. So we've gone from 54 to 59. 33 representatives say they were undecided. 2 refused to say how they planned to vote, and 9 could not be reached. So there's 9 that couldn't be reached, and so, I mean, that could be your votes right there. Only Gates said he planned to oppose his own expulsion. You know, Mickey Gates gets a vote on this too. State Representative Danny Watson, a Republican from Hope, just personally, I needed more time. I had no one to coerce me at all. I'm not going to do that. I'm not a kid, but we have to follow the law. So this is what's being told to the representatives, that the House of Representatives and the Senate, a couple months ago, they passed a law that said if you plead guilty or, you know, no contest, including, you know, to, felony or public or honest services crime or public service crime or whatever, you got to go. I mean, that's what the law says. State Representative Mickey Gates and his attorney say, yes, this is the new law, but it's unconstitutional. It contradicts Article 5. And so this, I'm assuming if they vote to expel, this will go to court. And they'll just challenge this new law as being in violation of an existing law in our state constitution, which means it's going to get messy. Now, that would be very awkward as well. If his colleagues vote to expel him and then the courts find that the law that they expelled him under was in fact unconstitutional, that'll be very interesting as well. The Gazette, the Arkansas Democrat Gazette does report, somebody criticized me the other day, quit calling the Democrat Gazette the Gazette. We killed the Gazette. It used to be the Arkansas Democrat, and then you have the Gazette, right? And so it's like, they're like, quit calling it the Gazette. The Gazette's done. It's over. It's finished. Anyway, Gates has already threatened a legal challenge if he is expelled. He also plans to seek re-election for a 4th term next year in defiance of a 2019 law prohibiting those who pled no contest to certain crimes from running for office. Gates and his attorney say the law is unconstitutional. Okay, so Article 5, Section 12 bars the legislature from expelling a member twice for the same reason. Matthew Shepard, the Speaker of the House, says that he's gone over this, he's mulled it over, and he's talked to legal counsel at the Bureau of Legislative Research that everything's fine, that they've got to expel him. Mickey Gates still maintains he holds no ill will towards Matthew Shepard or his other colleagues if they vote to expel him coming up on, Friday. This is going to happen. Now, interestingly, Joe Jett seemed to think a couple of weeks ago that expelling Mickey Gates was the wrong thing to do because there's a Arkansas Claims Commission, and he says that the Arkansas Claims Commission, this should have gone there first so that they could have aired the cases, meaning Mickey could have had plenty of time to air his reasoning for why he shouldn't be expelled, somebody else, and then they would make a non-binding recommendation, and then the House would consider. Matthew Shepard saying that he doesn't have to go through the Arkansas Claims Commission. They can just take it up under the full body. So anyway, we'll see what happens. There are some undecideds. State Representative Gayla McKenzie, Republican from Gravette, says she's undecided. There's other people in this article. We're out of time this hour. I'll wrap this up when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
Broadcasting from the Baker Implement Studios. Baker Implement, serving you with 11 convenient locations. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro.
Anyway, nothing's really changed with their deer herd. Now they're looking for it, and they found it in a few spots, and so now, they're changing up regulations and operating under this best practices protocol. And again, I'm not saying that is a bad thing. I'm not here. I don't want anybody to misunderstand me and say that we shouldn't be, cooperating with Game and Fish or whatever. I definitely want to. I've told Game and Fish they're more than welcome to come to my place and test for CWD all they want. And I mean that. We want to be cooperative, cooperate with them, but at the same time, I think there's two trains of thought, and it's maybe like anything else. Maybe the actual real truth lies somewhere in the middle. We're talking with State Representative Josh Miller. I'm on the CWD. I'm on the Game and Fish website. Their CWD page. It says in February 2016, an elk was harvested in Newton County, tested positive for CWD. Now, there was an elk herd that was brought in here by the, after they were out of Arkansas, they brought them back in. I'm curious, because up in Colorado, up in that area, right, the elk up there had a lot of CWD, and I understand they're flourishing now. Is that correct? That is true. If you go to where CWD was first discovered 25, 30 years ago, out in Colorado, it was discovered in elk and mule deer, and you go out there right now, those same areas, and those herds are flourishing, doing well. I mean, people are spending crazy amounts of money to go out there and hunt them, and so again, I don't want folks to be freaking out and distraught over this and think, well, we're gonna this is it. That deer hunting as we know it is over. I don't think that's the case. And I always want to remind folks, hey, our game wardens, our game and fish folks that are out there in the field, and I've said this before, Paul, is that there's more people that care about what the Game and Fish Commission does, the rules and regulations that they put out, and that put our game wardens and our field officers in under more scrutiny than they do about the state budget, taxes we raise, or whatever. Game and Fish is a very influential department in our state. And anyway, when you see these guys and ladies in the field, say hi to them, thank them for what they do, because we do ask them to do a tough job. Yeah. And they don't have a lot of backing. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, people are definitely critical, but the agency is very powerful. There are great people that work there. They're trying to do the best they can. Like you said, there are two schools of thought with this chronic wasting disease. But there are also other problems that can potentially happen and materialize because of their surveillance. Now, the Game and Fish, to be fair to them, they have said, listen, we want more hunters so that you can help us try to track where the chronic wasting disease is going. We have to have hunters or because we can't do it all by ourselves. But for example, they put Baxter County now. This is Mountain Home area, north central Arkansas. They've put Baxter County now in the quarantine zone. But there's some places in Baxter County. The regulation states, okay, so if you kill a deer now in Baxter County, you cannot take that meat with the bone in outside of the county, if the county next to it is not in the quarantine zone. That is now, against regulations. You're going to get a big hefty fine if they were to police it and catch you doing it. But there are places in Baxter County, Josh, where there's no way to get your meat into Mountain Home without first going outside of Baxter County into Fulton County and then back in. You know what I mean?
And so
Right.
There are unintended consequences from this, and it does make it more difficult sometimes.
There is, and I believe, I fully believe that if you're in a situation like that, and you were, questioned about it, I think our game wardens, all of our officers are going to be, try to be as understanding and
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, welcome back, folks. Thanks so much for being with us. We're going to be talking with Conduit legal analyst coming up at 7:33. Joey Williams will be with us. We're going to talk about the bail situation. A lot of people getting this caught up. I mean, the government wants money. We know this, right? The government wants money. And a lot of times they get people in the system with court costs and fines, and then they can't. And it's like they spend 10 days in jail for this, and then they lose their job, and then they're not able to pay their money, so then another warrant is issued, and then it becomes this vicious cycle. We're going to talk about that. It's a big deal. There are programs popping up. There are more lenient judges that are starting to realize that this is wrong. You're not actually helping people when you do this. It's just a cash grab, but, the government has incentive to do this because the county, the governments are getting all this money off of these people, but it's just really sad, though. Really is. I got a ticket about a couple, let's see, I guess maybe 2 months ago. I got a ticket. Yeah. And it was a speeding ticket. I pulled off of a road, or I pulled onto a road where the speed limit is 30 miles an hour, right? But it goes from 30 to 45 over a very short. By the time you come around that stoplight that I was coming around, it's a very short amount of time before it goes from 30 to 45. Well, so I went ahead and was in the 45 range before I was out of the 30. And I get pulled over. There's a cop sitting right there, doing what he is told is his job at this point. And he's right there, and he pulls me over. And, gives me a ticket or whatever, and, I pay the fine. It was $100 or something like that, and I'm just like, I ended up getting a city ordinance. You get that, well, good news, I'm doing you a favor. I've pulled you over for doing, we may have a giant crime problem going on, but we want to take a talented, educated police officer, and we want to reduce all of that potential just into somebody who's there to catch somebody going 45 into 30 when it's a speed trap. I mean, this is what it is. I got caught in a speed trap, not the first. And then they act like they're doing you a favor. Well, this is a city ordinance, and so it won't go in your insurance. Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks. $120. Anyway, that kind of stuff bugs me. I don't know about y'all. I mean, obviously everybody. Yes, was I over the speed limit? Yes, I was. Yes, absolutely. I paid the fine. It was an admission of guilt. That was me, right? But all of you guys have been in the same situation. And I don't understand. I just don't understand why this is acceptable sometimes. You know what I mean? I mean, you've got actual crimes that are, involving, other people, theft of property, violence. That's the stuff, man. That's the stuff. Not these revenue generators. The protection part. The protecting and serving. I think we missed that. And people are. I know departments deny that. Well, we don't have quotas. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. That's what I think anyway. I think the police departments all across the country, you know? Well, we got to raise this much money this week, so who are we going to ticket? Who are we going to fine? Who? Traffic violation, you know? And I say this, I mean, you know, again, I love police officers. I'm not saying I don't like you guys. I love you. I appreciate what you do. Absolutely, 100%. I just think, sometimes I think, man, you know, speed traps and stuff like that, I don't get it. And then that's just with local police. Then we take the Arkansas State Troopers, for example. Arkansas State Troopers, they're in these sports cars, which I have a huge problem. Who has a problem with unmarked cars? I have a problem with unmarked law enforcement cars. That should be not a thing. Unless you're like a detective that's investigating things other than speeding, you know? I have a I'm going to park my car here. I have this suspicion, I'm a real sleuth, that somebody's going to break the speed limit. Because honestly, what if we need your help? That's been my whole thing. What if we need the Arkansas legislature should pass a law. They should call it the promoting the public relations or repairing public relations between law enforcement and citizens. And in that piece of legislation, they should outlaw the sports cars that can be disguised as, you know, that are state troopers that are just there to catch you for speeding because you think, well, that's just a sports car. I can continue going the current speed that I'm going at. Where in reality is, if I needed help or I was being held at gunpoint or whatever, I need to know where the police are on the road. They don't need to be in disguise. Anyway, but I'm not emperor. I'm not making these decisions. Folks, State Representative Mickey Gates, we were talking about this last hour, going to face expulsion. He faces expulsion this coming Friday, and there are less than 10 people are undecided, according to the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. We have some who've come around. Representative Stephen Meeks says his constituents don't want Mickey Gates serving because he didn't pay his taxes. Quote, as it stands now, I'm prepared to vote for the resolution, Joe Jett said in an interview. John Payton, State Representative Payton, reportedly is still undecided. Then we have Representative Gayla McKenzie. She said that she's received questions from her constituents about this. Quote, I found people are very thoughtful. A lot of people don't know much about it. They've asked good questions. And in an interview, Mickey Gates said that he has not really talked to many of his colleagues. Quote, politically, I should be doing that. You know, trying to rally votes for himself. He's going to vote against his own expulsion. And again, Mickey Gates says that this is payback for his bill that would have changed the retroactive limits on auditing from the Department of Finance Administration standard. Then you got Democrat Representative Denise Garner saying no one is above the law. I want to see what happens in the meeting. I want to make sure we hear both sides, Democrat Garner says. If he didn't pay his taxes, then he needs to be removed from office. But she says she wants to hear both. So we got one Democrat who's undecided. We have State Representative Douglas House, who's not seeking another term. But he says, quote, I'll let Mr. Gates give his explanation before I make up my mind. So we have, John Payton, Douglas House, Representative McKenzie, and Democrat Representative Gardner. That's at least 4 who are undecided. By our count right now, I think you need 8. You need 8 more yes votes, and then State Representative Mickey Gates would be expelled. I am told that if he's expelled, he can't come back. And so I'm wondering what would happen if he were to resign and then run again. Just a thought. And, of course, we have, calls for him to resign. Governor Hutchinson has called for him to resign. Attorney General Leslie Rutledge, Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin, Matthew Shepard. A lot of people have called for Gates to resign just to stop this, stop this political inconvenience. But I gotta say, are you not a little intrigued that he hasn't resigned? Joe, are you not just a tad bit like, any other politician by this point would have resigned, and would have, would be like, okay, the no contest plea is what they're upset about. He pled no contest, even though if he completes the terms, it's not going to be anything. It's almost like the resignation is more, in this case, the resignation is more of an admission of guilt than the actual no contest plea. And I'm speculating here in the mind of Mickey Gates. I have not talked to him recently at all about this situation. Just so we're clear. I'm intrigued that somebody like State Representative Mickey Gates has not just said, okay, enough, I resign. I'm intrigued by it because, to me, it says that there's more to the story that we don't know. There's more to the story that is not yet in public record. And so this proceeding on Friday, where they're going to take up the potential expulsion and they're going to vote, and according to this, State Representative Mickey Gates will, in fact, be allowed to speak. For how long, we don't know. I would encourage Speaker Shepard. I mean, right now, I think you have the votes. I think, if I had to bet right now, I think, yes, I think they're going to have enough votes to expel Mickey Gates, but who knows? But if I were Speaker Shepard, I would want to give State Representative Mickey Gates as much time as he wanted to present his case. Now, not to filibuster, but like if he actually has something that needs to be said, submit it publicly, let everybody know what has happened, because we don't know what these bureaucrats were telling him before they arranged to have him arrested and publicly, perp walked, and they tipped off the media, and then they waited to have him arraigned for like 2 or 3 months right before early voting. We don't know. The fact of the matter is, we don't know what some of the conversations that Mickey Gates had with this particular bureaucracy that business owners are very familiar with, the Department of Finance Administration. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is something that we're going to be looking not forward to, but looking forward to see what happens on Friday when this thing goes down. 59 lawmakers said they will support expulsion. They need 67 votes. Right now, the count is at 59. Telephone number is 870-275-9799. Folks, as much as we are a Republican state, as much as we like what the Republican Party platform stands for, and I'm talking about majority-wise, the majority of Arkansans who are voters, they believe that the Republican Party and the platform are good policies generally. As much as that is the norm, even though we may not get the results that we want, even though it's taking a lot longer for that platform to actually translate into policies that mirror the platform. I mean, you have some good things. Don't get me wrong, but we're facing. I mean, as far as economics, we're facing this year alone $75 million net tax increase on the people of Arkansas coming out of the private sector back into the government. That's unacceptable. But as much as we talk about that, we still have Democrats here in this state that are Democrats, and I mean they are 100% in lockstep with the National Democrat Party. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was very evident to me as I watched this interview with Roby Brock and Democratic congressional candidate William Hanson, saying that Donald Trump absolutely committed impeachable offense. This is a guy, can you show this Talk Business and Politics article for them to see? Here it is. Here's William Hansen, and he is challenging Congressman Bruce Westerman, the successful Republican congressman from the 4th District, who's a frequent guest on this program. I want to read some of the quotes. Listen to this. Listen to him take this Democrat line. Quote, election law prohibits a person from receiving a gift, donation, or something of value from a foreign national, and it also prohibits a person from soliciting something of value. I think the president has certainly done that. No, he hasn't. The president is acting well within his rights as the executive. He can talk to whoever he wants, and there's an investigation into what actually happened in the corruption of Ukraine and in the 2016 elections with interference in our elections. That's what of course, in order to believe that, you have to actually be knowledgeable about what the intelligence community did leading up to the 2016 elections with the fake FISA warrants and the insurance policies and everything else. Something I think Mr. Hansen is probably ignorant of. But again, there are Democrats here in Arkansas still that are towing this party line of the National Democrats. And then he says this, quote, he did it in the open when he asked China to investigate. Well, now stop right there. Do you really think, and Jim Jordan is right on this, do you really think Trump was serious when he asked China to investigate the Bidens? Or do you think he was playing the media for fools yet again? Because in doing that, he knows the mainstream media will never talk about Joe Biden and China. Just like the mainstream media here in Arkansas will never talk about Arkansas and Asa Hutchinson and China in a negative light. He knows that they would never bring up China and Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. So he makes the claim to make them report it. Now, they report it negatively against Trump, but there's enough people that say, wait a second, you mean the Bidens were doing something in China too? And it was the first time many Americans heard it last week, all because the president said it. He wasn't being serious. Just like he wasn't serious when he said, hey, Russia, where are the 30,000 emails? That wasn't serious. Do you know anything about Trump? He was obviously joking. I, for one, wouldn't care. I mean, I would like to see those 33,000 emails she deleted, wouldn't you? Obviously, there's some very incriminating stuff there. Okay, real quick, again, this Democrat challenging Bruce Westerman, let's see here. I think we're going to have to just go vote and have a vote for impeachment. Now, I understand the purpose of having an impeachment inquiry because you should proceed with all the information that you can get, but I don't think that the administration is going to cooperate. They've been obstructing for the last 2 to 3 years, and I don't see that changing. I think they're going to try to run out the clock, trying to get Democrats to go to court, which will take a long time, and so by them obstructing, they should just add that as another impeachment article. When asked whether, again, this is Talk Business and Politics, Roby Brock, when asked President Trump's defense that he should be working with foreign countries such as Ukraine and China to curtail corruption, he says it's nonsensical when the president says that. He didn't want to end corruption in North Carolina voting practices. He didn't want to end corruption in a wide variety of things here domestically. I don't believe that. That's just him talking. The idea that Donald Trump is actually ending corruption is so far, I mean, that's something that the Democrats can't possibly get their heads around because they have been told from day one that this is the single focus of evil in the entire world, that Donald Trump is evil incarnate. That's what the media says about him day in and day out. And for poor Democrats, I'm sorry. I mean, I kind of feel sorry for some of you guys because you guys are actually you're not able to see what really is going on. And that's sad to me. That's very sad. Last quote from this guy. I don't think he's going to do so hot against Bruce Westerman. What do you think, Joe? I don't think this guy's going to win. He says, but he's not just trying to end corruption. He's identifying one particular person, meaning in the Ukraine, Joe Biden, that he wants the Ukraine and China to target. Vice President Joe Biden and his son, if he wanted to end corruption writ large, he perhaps would do it in Saudi Arabia. Now, see, here, he's just factually wrong. I just want to remind you, it's a fact. Donald Trump goes to Saudi Arabia. The first thing he did when he got elected was go to Saudi Arabia, and he met with the Crown Prince, bin Salman. We made an arms deal with Saudi Arabia. After Donald Trump left, bin Salman rounded up all of these corrupt Saudi princes in the royal family and held them captive in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel for days upon days upon days. You talk about the corruption in Saudi Arabia. Now, I know you're going to talk about Khashoggi or whatever who was murdered. You talk about the corruption in Saudi Arabia. Bin Salman went after the corruption in Saudi Arabia, but nobody talks about it. And for some reason, ever since bin Salman shook down members of his own family, the media have been trying to say that Donald Trump and the media is now all of a sudden Saudi Arabia is bad now, whereas you never heard about them before this change in power in Saudi Arabia. It's certainly very interesting. We're going to stop, going to take a break here and be back here in just a moment. Coming up, we're talking with Conduit legal analyst Joey Williams. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
Lenient. There's always extenuating circumstances and exceptions, to every rule. They don't want to. They're not going to come out there, and you've got to drive down one road, and you got one road in and out of your place, and you've got to cross the county line to get back into, your home county, or like you were saying, get back into Mountain Home or whatever. I don't believe that the game wardens are going to be sitting right there waiting for you to cross the county line, and as soon as you do, say, aha, I got you.
Now that you've said that, I think that's more likely to be the case.
Well, probably so. They're probably going to be like, well, we want to make Miller look like an idiot, which is not hard to do.
Oh, man.
But,
Well,
anyway.
So and again, I really appreciate your thoughtfulness on this. We're not trying to just throw the Arkansas Game and Fish under the bus here, but with this chronic wasting disease, there is talk about, like you said, it's in the soil, it's
exposing
in
the
the
truth
ground,
and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So we covered this on Friday, but I definitely think we have to talk a little bit more about this. So we had the gas tax kick in last week, so everybody's paying 3 cents more at the pump, or 6 cents if you're driving one of those nasty, dirty, polluting diesels. Arkansas tax collections are increasing. This from Conduit for Action. The Democrat Gazette reported the net in September increased by $34.5 million, or 6.1% from the same time a year ago, to $604.1 million, beating the state's forecast by 5.5%. So how did the governor respond? Quote, "This means we are successfully absorbing the latest round of income tax cuts, and we are continuing to pay for important new initiatives such as increased teacher pay and mental health stabilization units across the state." By the way, does his reference to mental health stabilization units, there's a lot of talk about red flag laws and mental health. I'm just extra sensitive towards that because I believe in the Second Amendment right. But anyway, it's baloney. The governor successfully absorbed the income tax cut by passing more taxes. State Representative Josh Miller was on the program Friday. We were talking about Arkansas Game and Fish and chronic wasting disease, but I did ask him at the very end of the interview. I said, hey, can I get your reaction to this record revenue, this beating the forecast revenue and he says, well, we got this record revenue for two reasons. Number one, the economy's doing well, and number two, we raised taxes. We nickel and dimed people, and we raised taxes. So, that's the truth. You can spin it all you want that we're somehow absorbing. It's clearly embarrassing for somebody that purports to be a conservative to, you have all this record money coming. People are figuring out that we were nickel and dimed into a $75 million net tax increase for the year 2020, fiscal year 2020, which is now, started in June. or July, and people are people are understanding that this is strange. And I also have to remind you that the Democrat Party of Arkansas complimented Governor Asa Hutchinson last week because they said he was supporting the impeachment inquiry of President Donald Trump. Did you hear about this? The Democrat Party congratulating Asa, essentially saying that they were glad he made the right decision, whereas everybody else, the RPA and our constitutional delegation and everything else, they were against impeachment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
Lenient. There's always extenuating circumstances and exceptions, to every rule. They're not going to come out there, and if you've got to drive down one road, and you got one road in and out of your place, and you've got to cross the county line to get back into, your home county, or like you were saying, get back into Mountain Home or whatever. I don't believe that the game wardens are going to be sitting right there waiting for you to cross the county line, and as soon as you do, say, aha, I got you.
Now that you've said that, I think that's more likely to be the case.
Well, probably so. They're probably going to be like, well, we want to make Miller look like an idiot, which is not hard to do.
Oh, man.
But,
Well,
anyway.
So and again, I really appreciate your thoughtfulness on this. We're not trying to just throw the Arkansas Game and Fish under the bus here, but with this chronic wasting disease, there is talk about, like you said, it's in the soil, it's in the ground. We might have had this for a long time before somebody finally caught it, and the deer have been doing fine potentially. I mean, we don't know one way or the other, but it's in the soil. But there are these feeding regulations, and private landowners are starting to worry that they're just going to take away the ability to feed via a corn feed or something like that altogether, because you can't do it except during the season, right?
Right. That if you're in the CWD zone, you can't feed. Now this doesn't mean you can't have bird feed out. It doesn't mean you can't do whatever. But I don't have the regulations in front of me. There are some exceptions. You can feed your obviously you can feed livestock, whatever. But during the they want to take away.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Really appreciate you being with us this morning. I've got this article. Now, this is back on the September the 23rd. It caught my attention. Tom Sissom, bail program aids inmates, but jail's crowding persists. It's this New York-based nonprofit that apparently raises money locally. It's called the Bail Project. And let's see here. Specifically, they're active in Washington County. A program to reduce the number of pretrial detainees in Washington County Jail has helped 25 people gain their release in the past month. And it says here, when people resolve their legal situation through acquittals, convictions, plea agreements, or other arrangements, the bail money is paid back to the fund and is used to assist others. Anyway, there are programs out there like this, from what I can tell, to try to kind of stop this recidivism that ends up happening. People can get trapped in a cycle, especially if they're low income, when they get when they get prosecuted for misdemeanors and things like that. And so I wanted to bring in a Conduit legal analyst. His name is Joey Williams. Joey, it's always great to talk to you, sir. Welcome back to the program, sir.
Thanks so much, Paul. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so you authored a white paper on, it says reduction of waiver of carry fees in Arkansas misdemeanor courts. So you're kind of familiar with this system. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, sure. So during law school, I had the great privilege of working at the prosecutor's office here in Washington County. And during that experience, I learned that we kept seeing a lot of the same people come through the court system. And those people, I was in charge of the misdemeanor area, and those folks that were coming through were repeat people, Arkansans. And I noticed, and me and some other deputy prosecutors noticed that they were continuing to come through, and they were there because of not paying off their fines. We don't have a debtor's prison per se, but we kind of do. And it kind of inspired me to write a white paper, do some research on what the state pays and how much the state pays in taxes to keep these folks in the system, and what we can do to alleviate that number. It's a perfect time to talk about it, to be honest, because a lot of counties are talking about the expansion of jails, building bigger jails, and they're coming across this, they're hitting the brick wall. As a conservative, we don't want government to get bigger, because we do know when government does get bigger, our freedoms shrink, and that's what we believe here at Conduit.
And they're talking about expanding these jails and raising taxes to do it, and that's what's so disturbing about this. And so, do you think there are reforms that could be made? I mean, I know there are in my neck of the woods, there are judges that were elected based on the idea, based on this platform of, hey, we got to do something about these repeat offenders that are getting caught in a cycle. So what does that cycle look like for folks? I mean, what could possibly end up happening? Somebody gets picked up for some misdemeanor.
Sure. I mean, a lot of the misdemeanors, let's be very clear, a misdemeanor is the lowest offense in the criminal justice system. And you alluded earlier, you got a speeding ticket. I'm so surprised that you got a speeding ticket. And that's considered a misdemeanor. And a lot of folks that get speeding tickets, there's a lot of hardworking Arkansans that can't afford that speeding ticket all at once. So what happens, they appear in court, they set up a payment plan, and also there's an assessment fee that's tacked on to that payment plan. If they're not able to pay off their fine in full within 30 days, a $5 or $10 or even $15 fee is tacked on to their bill. And when you have hardworking Arkansans that are paying $25, $10 a month because that's all they can afford, they are never getting out of the system. And when they miss a payment, they get a court appearance date, and if they do not show up in court, guess what? It's a failure to appear. That's another $350 charge. A warrant's written for their arrest, which is another $300 charge on top of that. They're found, they're arrested, they're brought to jail. They can't post bail because they have no money. So you can see very quickly that the cycle begins, and you see these folks that have been in the system, that have been in the system for years, and for a $300 charge, they've paid $2,000 over 3 years, and they're still paying for late fees, court costs, court fines, and et cetera. And the thing that really bothered me and so many other colleagues is this assessment fee that's tacked on to their bill at the end of the month. This was extremely disturbing because if they're trying their hardest to pay off this bill, this fine, they're never making leeway.
Yeah, and the incentive here, let's be honest, is one where, obviously we all want a strong judiciary. We want people, to obey the law and everything else. But come on, we know that these, like you said, are misdemeanors, and we know that the incentive here could be perverse. I mean, if we're talking about something that can't pay a speeding ticket, or let's say they get a DWI or whatever the case may be, if you're not going to be able to pay that, it's probably because you're on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale, and so then you put people in these vicious cycles, and they miss a payment, then they get picked up, then they lose their job because they're going to go to jail. You're going to go like a mandatory amount of time to go to jail. You lose your job, but then you get out of jail, you still have to pay all this money to the government. So they have an incentive here because it's kind of a cash cow, right?
Oh, absolutely, and it's another way for government to get bigger. There's our police officers are great, and you touched on that earlier. You have a police officer that's ordered to stand, at an exit to stop people for speeding. We need police officers to monitor the roads, but it comes down to the fact that our judicial system within the state needs to look at how many people are being jailed. What's really bothering that assessment fee, Paul. We looked into, during my research, where that actually goes. And half of that fee, that $10, that $15 is tacked on at the end of the month, goes to the Administration of Justice Fund. And the Administration of Justice Fund is only there to monitor the fees, fines, and costs of courts. And the other half goes back to that county, that city, for a very strict fund for their technology fees. Now, looking into every county, each county has thousands upon thousands of dollars in this fund that they only use maybe $2,000 or $3,000 every 3 or 4 years to update their computers. So this fund keeps growing, and it's what government gets bigger from this, and it's a huge issue. And also during the research that we did back in 2017. The U.S. Department of Justice came out with a great paper on some stats on what kind of folks are in jail. In the county and city at that time, there are about 745,000 inmates that are jailed locally. And 65% of that were awaiting court action, meaning they were arrested, they could not post bail, they were sitting in jail until their court date, which a court date's usually anywhere from 30 to 90 days later.
Wow.
So with this talk of expanding the jails, we very well may need to do that in some areas, but I think it's very important to look at the local level and understand some of these statistics and try to get some sort of mechanism in place with the bail system and keep folks out of jail that really don't belong there to begin with.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that is contributing for sure to this, overcrowding of the jail. And their answer is to, okay, well, we need to pass more taxes and build a bigger jail. Or that's one idea that I think is a bad idea. Likewise, it's a complicated situation though, because going back to this article here, talk about the former circuit judge in Benton County, John Comstock, said the county should explore pre-arrest diversion programs that give law enforcement agencies options other than arrests for people who may have committed certain types of nonviolent crimes. As one example, he pointed to the adoption of sobering centers in other jurisdictions to handle public intoxication offenders. So instead of getting arrested for public intox, you go to a sobering center and you don't actually, they wait, make sure you're okay, you're not going to hurt yourself, and then you go about your way. Now, to some people, that's going to be like, really? If it's against the law, you got to go to jail. But and on the other hand, we have this issue. It's like, do you want to pay more taxes, or are there other solutions? Not to mention the fact, they have made the penalties for intoxication or driving while drunk, very, very steep, mandatory penalties, and yet the amount of people, decreasing people who are drinking while driving or whatever, it's pretty much plateaued. There's still a certain amount of people that just continue to do it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Respond to that.
No, that's a great point, Paul. And I think if you look at county by county in our state, there's no consistency across the board. I can tell you by firsthand experience, I've sat in courts in very small towns where somebody was across the center line, a kid, he was still in college locally, and he was charged $800 for crossing the center line. And they were maxed out every charge possible because at the end of the day, that money goes where? Right back to the county. They want to maximize those fees, fines, and costs. They want to get that money back into the county to increase that local government. It's just a never-ending machine. And every county is different. And I don't know, we don't really have a solution. I'm not going to talk about a solution to this because it's so complex, but I think it's very important as a conservative not to just say, okay, let's pay more taxes to expand the jail because every criminal has to pay. And I, as a conservative, I believe that. But the question is, how much should they pay for how long?
Yeah, I think that's the real issue here is, how much money are we talking about? Should some of these fines be reduced? Should it be more, be more manageable for them? You get caught in this cycle, and it does contribute to the overcrowding of the jails. And at some point, it's the government really, victimizing a certain sector of the socioeconomic. I mean, and it's, the left always accuses those of us on the right of not having compassion or anything else, but that's certainly not the case here. I mean, this is a quote from the paper you wrote. The carry fee disproportionately impacts the indigent and socioeconomically depressed populations. Over the last 3 decades, court fines and associated fees have increased dramatically across the nation. The carry fee in district courts is just an example of one of those fees. The inability to pay fines in their entirety ought to be subjugated, ought not be subjugated by additional fines. I mean, I think that's reasonable at this point, don't you, Joey? Obviously, you.
I sure do. Absolutely. That's what I personally believe, and my colleagues that did the research with me believe as well. And I had the great honor to, like I said, to work in Washington County, and I had the chance to meet with so many judges and clerks in 5 different courts, and they solved this problem firsthand. And these clerks, the research that we did showed that it cost Arkansans so much money locally to just keep track of these folks for years and years. And I was able to really pull some files of the folks that were paying for years on, $1,000 fine. They paid $3,000 in 4 years. They still owe $1,200. And to look at them and say, listen, you did your time, you paid the fine, you paid the price for your penalty, and we're going to cross you off the list. You're good to go. Good luck to you and your family. You're trying to get ahead. I mean, these are hard-working Arkansans, and it's just in the lower social economic structure of our state, and it's just not fair to keep these people down. And at the end of the day, Paul, it just makes government bigger, and that's the goal of these local governments. Anytime you have anything to do with government, their goal is to maintain power and to grow, and this is just one of many ways they continue to do that.
Wow. Conduit legal analyst Joey Williams, we appreciate it, sir. It's always great to talk to you. Thanks for speaking some truth this morning.
Hey, thanks, Paul. I definitely appreciate being on the show. And to those of you that are listening, if you want to learn more about Conduit and even help support us, please visit www.conduitforcommerce.org. We appreciate everything you do, Paul. Thank you.
All righty. Hey, thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. That's conduitforcommerce.org, folks. I mean, you've seen the ads, you hear the ads played. But that's certainly one way, a big way that you could help us out tremendously. The telephone number this morning and every day is 870-275-9799. We have your meme of the day coming up next. I said at the very first of this show, I said, we've already got your meme of the day. Now, Joe normally is scouring the internet for memes during the show. But I found this one over the weekend at my house. I was sitting on my couch. I was looking at Instagram, and I found this one. And I sent it to Joe over the weekend. I was like, this is Monday's meme of the day, 100%, because it's something I've said before, but it's like totally, it was me. It just spoke to me specifically. We'll be back in just a moment with that. Don't go anywhere.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
baiting, basically, putting out corn and that kind of stuff from the first of the year, basically January through the end of August. Now, we can feed from September 1 to December 31. Now, and that's one of those things I'm not sure about, that I understand what the rationale is for the rule. The Game and Fish does not want to make it where folks can't feed their deer season, because then they might see a decline in the number of hunters, and that's not what they need. So they're going to keep baiting legal during the season. And again, I'm kind of the opinion, if we know for a fact that deer being around corn feeders or mineral licks or whatever is a problem, and is why this disease is getting transferred, then let's just outlaw feeding altogether. But because we're saying, hey, we're gonna make it where we're not going to transfer the disease for 2/3 of the year, and that other third we're going to wish it luck and hope it doesn't happen.
I see what you're saying. You're essentially making the point that doesn't make much sense.
It does raise the question, and again, I understand Game and Fish is saying, their answer to it is, well, we want to make it. We don't want to run off hunters. We still want to, enable them to do what they've always done, and carry on like normal through deer season. Well, I mean, if you're like me, I like to feed year round. I like to have, so we do supplemental feeding and all that stuff at our place, and that's something that we enjoy doing, and it kind of, it sucks to think, well, if I'm feeding past New Year's Day,
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us. We're going to have your meme of the day here in just a moment, so you certainly want to stay tuned for that. Well, I guess it's kind of related, but hey, let me get to some of your Facebook comments before we get into that. Let's see here. Jackie, this isn't justice. This is the government making revenue off the backs of the poor. We just were talking with Conduit legal analyst Joey Williams, and we're talking about this recidivism problem with lower-income folks in the jails. Jackie, I think that kind of sums it up. This isn't justice. This is the government making revenue off the backs of the poor. You get caught once, and then you really never get out of the system. Jackie writes, I've seen counties move money out of that fund into other funds for other uses. It's a slush fund. The more criminals created, the more jails needed, the more taxes for new jails/prisons. That's a really good. That's from Woods on Facebook. Listen to this. Glenn writing, I remember how hard law enforcement fought making seatbelts a secondary offense. Ooh, I remember that too. Yeah, they really don't like that, right? Again, it's a revenue. It's an excuse for probable cause, right? It's always the whole seatbelt situation. That's ridiculous too. You're not actually, as far as public safety goes, you're not hurting anybody by not wearing a seatbelt. You may be risking your life. It may be more dangerous for you, but the government should have nothing to do with seatbelt laws. Unless, of course, then they say, no, but we should have something to do with car seats and your toddler and blah, 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 blah. I didn't realize, I'm a parent of what is she, 2 and 4 months now? 4 or 5 months? I'm a parent of a 2-year-old, so that's what my life's like right now. It's actually really awesome in a lot of ways. The terrible twos, though, are a thing. If you don't know that, many of you obviously do that have had kids. But I mean, I had no idea. I was asking my mom the other day, like, what were the car seats like? No, there were no car seats. What? Well, what'd you do when you had your baby, you know, you had to go visit family or whatever. Oh, just held the baby in my arms. Held the baby in my arms, and we just drove to wherever we needed to go to. What? I mean, you know what? It's crazy. The sky didn't fall. I mean, listen, I know there were tragedies. I know these things, I know these car seats and stuff to save lives and everything else. But it's like, I mean, that was a time when people just didn't think it was the government's business to tell you what you did with your kids. And then it just moves into all these other things, right? Are you smoking in the car? Yeah. Is it good for him? No, it's not. But there was a time when our idea of government was like, don't just leave me alone. And wouldn't you know it? All these little offenses here and there have caused more people to go to jail and have caused more crime, more recidivism. And now they want to raise your taxes more to maintain this big system, right? Like you got to have a booster seat now till what? You're 17 years old. Don't ride in the car with your you can't ride in the car with your parents unless you have a booster seat. It's like it went from having, kids, toddlers in car seats, and it's like, no, we've got to have another car seat that everybody has to buy. And it's a booster seat. It's another reason to get a ticket. Another reason to call Child Protective Services on you. Yeah, these kids now. I rode in the back of my dad's Datsun yellow truck in the back seat, which didn't have one, on a wicker stool while my sister sat in the actual front seat. That's what I grew up doing. Anyway, but now, I mean, can you imagine? Like now, that's child abuse. Is what that is now. Okay, here is, let's go to this YouTube video first. This was a stunt done by a pro-Trump group called LaRouche, but I want you to listen to what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, after this actress, said this.
We're not going to be here for much long because of the climate crisis. We only have a few months left. I love that you support the Green Deal, but it's not getting rid of fossil fuel. It's not going to solve the problem fast enough. A Swedish professor saying, we can eat dead people, but that's not fast enough. So I think your next campaign slogan has to be this: we got to start eating babies. We don't have enough time. There's too much CO2. All of you, you're a pollutant. Too much CO2. We have to start now, please. You are so great. I'm so happy that you're really supporting the Green Deal, but it's not enough. Even if we would bomb Russia, we still have too many people, too much pollution. So we have to get rid of the babies. That's a big problem. Just stopping having babies is not enough. We need to eat the babies, and this is very serious. Please give a response.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Please give a response. And this is her response.
No, we'll go ahead. It's so no. Yeah, no. Thank you. So I think so one of the things that's very important to us is that we need to treat the climate crisis with the urgency that it does present.
What is
Luckily, we have more than a few months. We do need to hit net zero in several years. But I think we all need to understand that there are a lot of solutions that we have and that we can pursue, and that if we act in a positive way, there's space for hope.
All right, stop.
We are never beyond hope.
Okay, yeah. Why in the world would Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez not be like, okay, well, obviously we're not going to eat babies? I mean, what a terrible snowflake response. Where it's like, well, this woman, she's probably thinking this woman needs help. But you got to say, like, first of all, it was a performance. The woman was not serious. But there are people that say, like Bernie Sanders says, we got to have abortions to control the weather, to control the climate. You got that woman putting out the idea. By the way, the people in the audience were surprisingly calm, like, eat the babies? Okay, that's a suggestion. All right, we'll write that down, put that on the list. We'll at least consider it. Here is the meme of the day. Considering all of that. This is from our favorite Instagram person, 4_touchdowns. And this brings it all together, doesn't it, folks? Government protecting us from climate change since 1350. And it's a photo of the Aztecs on top of the ziggurat, or the Mayans, with the sun god taking out the beating heart while he's being held down in a human sacrifice. You see how that's relevant, right? Like the people that were following their leaders on the tops of these high places, suspended in the air, they thought they were controlling the weather as well, but they really weren't. They were just killing people to control the population, and they knew what the stars and stuff were going to do because they were the elite in the society. Yeah, but you go for it, right? Like the left thinks they can control the weather by eliminating CO2.